then also I stop racing and then we all together.
But it's clear that at the moment we cannot fight with those cars.
Listen, guys, a few weeks ago, the story was that Max Verstappen might walk away from Red Bull or even quit Formula One altogether. Remember our last few videos on that exit clause? Set them aside. Because right now Max has a faster car, a rulebook rewritten to his taste, and he's staying exactly where he is, and he pulled all of that off without signing a single thing or moving an inch. This isn't a driver scrambling to escape a sinking team. This is the most one-sided power play F1 has seen in years. So today, forget, is he leaving? The real question is how one man cornered an entire sport. Here's exactly how he did it. To see how impressive this is, you have to remember how bad it looked barely a month ago. Quick version if you haven't followed every twist. Max has 4 world titles, but the 2026 rules reset the entire sport, and Red Bull turned up with a car that simply wasn't quick enough. He was stuck 7th in the championship, nearly 100 points off the lead, watching Mercedes and Ferrari drive away from him. He was openly trashing the new regulations in every interview. His own manager kept dropping pointed little lines about Max not being born to race in the midfield, and he'd hinted more than once that if the sport didn't change, he might just walk away entirely. Put it all together, and every single sign pointed the same direction: the best driver of his generation, trapped in a slow car, on a deal he might rip up, in a sport he might quit. That is a corner with no obvious way out. Now watch how he turned that exact corner into the strongest hand in the paddock. Start with the rules, because this is the move almost everyone has already forgotten. From the very first test of the year, Max went after the 2026 regulations in public, and he did not hold back. He called the racing anti-racing. He compared it to Mario Kart. He described it as Formula E on steroids. And there was a real problem underneath the sound bites. These cars lean on the battery for nearly half their power, and on the fast circuits, drivers were literally running out of energy down the straights, lifting and coasting where they used to be flat out. He wasn't just whining. He was right, and everyone could see it. Then he raised the stakes. After Japan, he said plainly he'd consider leaving the sport if it wasn't fixed. Now, look at that from Liberty Media's side of the table. The single biggest name in your championship, the 4-time champion, the face on every poster, is telling the planet your brand new product is a joke and the memes are doing the rest. So the sport blinked. F1 agreed to pull battery deployment back toward 42% for 2027 and to shift further toward combustion power, a 60-40 split, by 2028. Sit with that for a second. One driver complained loudly enough and credibly enough that a global championship changed its rules. That is not a sulk. That is leverage, and it landed before the season was even half over. Then there's the exit clause, and this is where people misread him completely. His Red Bull deal reportedly runs to 2028, but it carries a performance clause, and the gist, as different outlets describe it, is that if he's outside the top 2 in the championship by the summer break in August, he's free to leave at the end of this year, with a window to actually decide that stretches toward October. The exact wording varies depending on who's reporting it, so treat the fine print as reported rather than confirmed. But here's the genius of the thing. Sitting 7th, almost 100 points back, that clause is basically guaranteed to unlock. And the masterstroke is that Max never has to use it. He only has to let everyone know it's there. A door you can open whenever you like is worth far more left closed, because every single week it stays shut, Red Bull has to keep earning it. And his manager Vermeulen kept that door creaking all season long. Loyalty only goes so far, he kept saying. Max wasn't born to race in the midfield. We want to finish this together. But the car has to be competitive. Notice the pattern. The threat was never really about leaving. The threat itself was the product he was selling. Move 3 is the one that broke the internet last week, McLaren. The story landed that Max was in secret talks with the reigning Constructors' champions, a possible swap that would send Oscar Piastri the other way to Red Bull. And the reason it wasn't laughed off is that the pieces actually fit. His longtime race engineer, Gianpiero Lambiase, is already heading to McLaren by 2028. Designer Rob Marshall left Red Bull for McLaren and helped build their title-winning cars. The bones of his old Red Bull are already in Woking. Then came this week's twist. Sky reported it was Max's own camp that picked up the phone first. And then, almost immediately, his manager flatly denied it, telling German media there was no truth in it and no negotiations had taken place. So which is it? Did they call or didn't they? Here's the thing, it genuinely doesn't matter, and that's the brilliance of it. You don't need a signed McLaren contract, you need Red Bull to believe one is possible. A real bidder, even a quiet one, even a denied one changes the entire conversation. Because suddenly, Red Bull isn't negotiating against Max's patience anymore. They're negotiating against another team. With as little as a single phone call, he manufactured an auction. And this is the moment it all pays off. Because look at what the most successful team of the last decade actually did in response. Red Bull threw a 7-part upgrade package at their own home race in Austria. New floor, new side pods. The whole rear end rebuilt a package people in the paddock openly described as a last-ditch move to keep Max happy. Their most senior leadership flew in to sit down with his manager across the weekend. The photos of those meetings were everywhere. And when Max crashed in qualifying, the team rushed out to insist it was a car problem, not his error. They apologized to their own driver. Stop and picture that for a second. The team that won 4 straight championships with this man upgrading in a panic, holding emergency meetings, publicly apologizing all to convince one driver not to leave. For a decade, Red Bull held every card in that relationship. They decided the strategy, they picked the number 2, they set the terms. And in the space of a few months, Max quietly took every single card off the table and left them chasing. That is the entire power structure of Formula One turned completely upside down. Then Austria handed him the proof. Max took that upgraded car, started 5th after the qualifying crash, and dragged it all the way to 2nd, slicing past both Mercedes on his way through, finishing just 1.6 seconds behind the win, his best result of the entire season. His teammate Hajar backed it up in 6th and said the upgrades had clearly kicked in. Even race winner Russell admitted afterward that Max had made his life uncomfortable. Overnight, the slow car had pace, and the struggling team looked like contenders again. And here's the punchline to the whole story. Max got the one thing he'd been demanding from the very start, a car that can fight without leaving, without signing for anyone, without even publicly promising to stay. One F1 outlet summed it up perfectly. He played chess while everyone else played checkers, and what he ultimately won was the right to do absolutely nothing. Stay exactly where he is, keep every option open, and make the team come to him. That is not a man who got lucky with a timely upgrade. That is a man who could see the board 3 moves before anyone else sat down to play. So let's actually answer the question this whole video is built on: was this genius, or did it just happen to work out in his favor? Here's my honest take. The pieces line up far too cleanly to write off as an accident. The red complaints that bent the rules his way. The clause kept deliberately, visibly alive. The McLaren story surfacing at the precise moment Red Bull needed the most pressure. The upgrade arriving right on cue to answer it. Every move set up the next one. That's not a run of coincidences, that's a sequence. But here's the part that matters, and the part that keeps me honest. Max will never admit a word of it. Ask him about any of it, and he just shrugs. He says the noise does nothing for him, that he doesn't pay it any attention, that these days with AI you can Photoshop anything you want. And that, honestly, is exactly what the sharpest operators do. They never show you the trick, because a trick you can see isn't worth anything. So my verdict is this. The best driver in the world has quietly turned into its single best negotiator, and 2026 is the season he proved it beyond doubt. There's just one asterisk hanging over all of it, and it's a big one. Leverage only works for as long as the car keeps delivering. The day Red Bull loses the pace again, every card Max is holding turns straight back into paper. And that asterisk deserves a proper look, because it's the one thing the Max is a genius takes keep skipping. The rule changes are real, and on the record, F1 is genuinely pulling battery power down for 2027 and moving toward that 60-40 combustion split by 2028, changes Max lobbied for out loud. The clause math is real too. He's 7th, nearly 100 points adrift, so barring a miracle he'll be outside the top 2 at the break, and that door does unlock. But here's the catch that keeps him human rather than superhuman: his actual options are far thinner than the leverage makes them look. Mercedes just recommitted to Russell and Antonelli. Russell said he's staying 100%. Ferrari is locked down with Hamilton and Leclerc deep into the next decade. Even McLaren has both seats under contract. So the auction works precisely because nobody can call the bluff. There might not be an open seat to actually walk into. The leverage is completely real. The destination might not exist at all, and Red Bull, sitting fourth in the constructors' standings and terrified of losing him, simply can't afford to be the one who tests which. So here's where it all nets out. Max Verstappen took a slow car, a rule book he openly hated, and a contract clause, and spun the three of them into the strongest hand in Formula One. He got the rules changed, got the upgrades built, and gets to stay exactly where he wanted, all while the most powerful team in the sport does the chasing. My take? It's the most impressive thing he's done all season, and he never once touched a steering wheel to do it. But the entire house of cards rests on a single thing: Red Bull staying fast. And we find out if they can this weekend, because Silverstone is a sprint. 2 races in 2 days, on exactly the kind of fast, flowing track that exposed this car earlier in the year. If Red Bull holds up there, the exit talk is finished, and the masterclass is complete. If they fall apart, every piece of that leverage resets overnight. I'm breaking that one down tomorrow, so subscribe and you'll have it the second it goes live. And here's the question I genuinely can't answer yet. When that clause window actually opens in August, does Max have anywhere real to go, or is the greatest bluff in F1 only working because nobody dares to call it? Tell me below.